After 25 years, you won't even look me in the eye when you fire me." Isaiah's voice shook, but not from fear. He stood in the middle of the giant back lawn, dark hands hanging at his sides, his green work shirt stained with dirt and sweat. Wind moved through the branches of the old oak tree behind him, the one that rose over the billionaire's glass mansion like a quiet guard. Jacob Hart stared past him, jaw tight, eyes cold, the glow from the infinity pool washing his sharp face in blue. He had a phone in one hand, a crumpled notice in the other. "You buried something under that tree," Jacob said. "Security saw you. I asked if anyone on staff knew about my mother's ring going missing. You didn't say a word. So tell me why I shouldn't assume the worst." Isaiah's eyes flashed, a hurt Jacob had never seen there before. Usually the old gardener's face was calm, mouth bent in a soft smile as he trimmed hedges or talked to the roses like they were his children. Now, lines stood out deep in his brown skin. "If you think I stole from you, sir, then you don't know me at all," he said quietly. The sir tasted wrong in the air. "I ain't never taken so much as a paperclip from this place." Jacob shook his head, more to clear the mess in his own thoughts than to answer. His chest still burned from the email he'd opened that morning. The one from his bank about a hack, the one the board had answered, with 20 panicked calls. He looked at the oak, where the soil at the base had been turned, a small circle of fresh earth in his perfect yard. "Pack up your tools," he said, forcing steel into his voice. "I'm done having this conversation." The words hung there between them like smoke. For a moment, it looked like Isaiah might step toward him, might say the thing that would crack the wall Jacob kept around his life. But then the older man's eyes went from angry to tired, so tired that Jacob felt something twist in his gut. "All right, Mr. Hart," Isaiah said at last, "if that's how it is." He took off his cap and held it in his hand, the breeze ruffling the gray curls at his temple. "Just remember, money can buy a lot of things," he added, voice low, "but it can't buy back trust once you throw it away." Jacob's jaw tightened. "This isn't about trust," he snapped. "It's about facts." He turned away before Isaiah could see the doubt flicker in his eyes and started back toward the wide stone patio, his expensive shoes silent on the grass. The house rose above him, glass walls shining with the last light of the Los Angeles evening. Everyone called it the Hart Fortress in the business magazines. 10 acres of hills and views and things that beeped when you walked past them. Inside, people were already setting up for the charity gala, stringing lights, rolling in tables, laying out white cloths that cost more than most people's rent. A drone buzzed overhead, taking test shots for some online article about how billionaires really live. Jacob barely saw any of it right now. All he could see was his mother's ring in his mind. The thin gold band with the small diamond that had been the only thing she kept when they lost the little house in South Central. It had been missing from the safe for 3 days. His security chief had said, "Only staff have been near that room, Mr. Hart," in that flat voice that meant we both know what that usually means. At the patio door, Jacob glanced back almost without meaning to. Isaiah was still there in the yard, a single straight figure under the old oak, his tool cart beside him like a faithful dog. That tree had been there since before the house, planted when the grounds were nothing but dry hill. His father had made a big deal about it, dragging Jacob, then 10 years old, out with a tiny shovel, laughing as they tried to move rocks bigger than their feet. "Every man needs one tree he can count on," his father had said, patting the small sapling. "Something that stays when everything else changes." Isaiah had been there that day too, a younger man in the same green shirt, steady hands guiding theirs. For a second, the memory pressed up so strong that Jacob almost called out. Then his phone buzzed, flashing the name of an investor, and the past snapped shut like a book. Inside, the air was cool and smelled like lemon and glass cleaner. A caterer in a white jacket nearly bumped into him with a tray of shrimp. "Oh, sorry, Mr. Hart," she said, eyes wide. He waved it off and kept moving, through the high-ceilinged living room to his office at the back. The room was all dark wood and screens, floor-to-ceiling windows, looking straight out at the oak, which stood like a dark hand against the pink sky. He dropped into his chair, the leather sighing under him. On his desk, 3 phones blinked with messages. His assistant had left a neat folder with the words, "Media Talking Points" on the front. People wanted him to smile tonight, to talk about giving back, to pose next to the giant check he would hand some school for a new computer lab. "It's good for your image," they always said. Billionaire with a heart. He stared past the papers at the base of the tree, where the earth was black and newly turned. What would a man like Isaiah even do with a diamond ring? Jacob wondered, anger mixing with a thin line of shame. Isaiah drove an old truck that coughed smoke. He lived in a part of town Jacob's friends only mentioned when they talked about crime rates. But he was also the one who had shown Jacob how to hold a rake, who had taught him the names of the flowers his mother loved, who had stood in the back row at Jacob's college graduation in a too-big suit, clapping until his hands were red. People change, Jacob muttered to himself. Hadn't he learned that 1,000 times in boardrooms? One year someone was your partner. The next year they sold your idea for double without blinking. He opened his laptop and tried to drown his thoughts in numbers. The gala that night went off like a show. Cars slid up the long drive, headlights washing over the trimmed bushes. Women in bright dresses and men in sleek tuxes spilled out, laughing, taking selfies with the view. A string quartet played near the pool. Waiters in black carried trays of tiny food Jacob could never quite identify. He moved through the crowd with the smooth smile he had practiced in so many mirrors, shaking hands, nodding as people told him how amazing the place looked. Someone said, "This oak is incredible, Jake. Did you import it from Europe or something?" And he almost laughed at the idea of the tree on a boat. "Family tree," he said instead. "Been here a long time." Later, when a woman from a magazine pointed her camera toward the yard and asked him to stand under the branches, he did, but his eyes dropped to the dark circle of fresh dirt at the base as the flash snapped. After the guests left and the lights went dark, Jacob lay awake in his giant bed, staring at the ceiling. The city lights below the hill blinked like restless stars. He could hear the soft murmur of the night crew cleaning downstairs, the low hum of the fridge, the whisper of the air system. He could not stop thinking about Isaiah's face when he had said, "You don't know me at all." He turned on his side, then onto his back, the sheets smooth and cool. At last he gave up, threw on some sweats, and padded barefoot down the hall. In the dark kitchen, silver surfaces glowed faintly. Through the huge back windows, the oak was a black shape against the sky, its branches drawn in sharp lines by the moon. On impulse, Jacob stepped out onto the patio, the night air cool on his skin. Crickets hummed somewhere in the bushes. The stone was cold under his feet. He walked across the grass, the damp seeping into the thin cotton of his socks. Up close, the fresh soil at the base of the tree was even more obvious, a dark scar in the neatly mulched circle. He knelt and touched it. It was soft, looser than the earth around it, like it had been turned and pressed back in a hurry. "What were you doing, Isaiah?" he whispered. "Stealing, hiding, or something else?" He pressed his fingers deeper and felt, just for a second, something hard under the surface, like the corner of a rock or a box. A faint cold ran up his spine. He sat back on his heels, heart beating faster. A wind picked up, rushing through the leaves with a low roar. Somewhere down the hill, thunder grumbled. The weather app had said light storm, nothing serious. But as the first fat raindrop hit his arm, Jacob stepped back toward the house. The clouds rolled in fast, turning the sky from black to a strange purple. By the time he reached his bedroom again, rain was coming hard, slapping against the windows, running down in jagged lines. He stood there a long time, watching it pound the oak, blur the yard, wash over the dark patch of soil until it sank and sagged, He told himself he would call security in the morning and have them dig up whatever was there. If it was his mother's ring, he would know. If it was nothing, he didn't know what he would feel. Morning came gray and heavy, the storm still grumbling off in the distance. The yard smelled like wet earth and leaves, fresh and sweet in a way even the fancy candles inside could not copy. Jacob pulled on jeans and a hoodie and went straight out back, not even stopping for coffee. The grass squished under his shoes as he crossed to the oak. The base of the tree looked different now. The circle of new dirt had sunk even more during the night, forming a shallow dip like a small mouth. Bits of roots showed through, like thin fingers, and in one spot, about the size of a coin, something metal gleamed. Jacob's breath caught. "Security," he called, louder than he meant to. The guard at the side door jerked his head up. "Sir, get me a shovel," Jacob said. "Now." Minutes later, he stood with a shovel in his hands, the weight of it strange and familiar. He had not held one since those early days with his father and Isaiah, turning soil that did not seem to want to move. The guard hovered nearby, worried eyes on the tree like it might fall. "You sure you don't want one of the crew to do that?" he asked. Jacob shook his head. "If there's something under here that got my gardener fired, I'm the one who's going to see it first." The first push of the shovel met soft resistance, then slid in. He lifted a pile of wet earth and tossed it aside. Again. Mud splattered his jeans. Sweat pricked his forehead. He dug until the metal glint grew from a spot to a line, then to a corner. "It's a box," he muttered. At last he crouched down and brushed away the dirt with his hands. A small rusted metal box lay there, about the size of a shoebox. The kind you might find in an old man's closet, full of coins and old receipts. A worn leather strap wrapped around it, and there, pressed into the side, was a small, familiar sticker. Half covered in grime, a bright red heart with the letters JH in the middle. The kind of thing a child makes and sticks on everything. Jacob's throat went dry. He remembered that sticker. He had drawn it in a school art class, proud of his initials inside a crooked heart, and had put it on his sketchbook, on his lunchbox, on his bedroom door. One day, he had stuck it on a plain metal box his father had brought home, and they had laughed about putting my heart in a box. Slowly, with hands that did not feel like his own, Jacob pulled the box free from the roots. For a moment, he just sat there in the wet grass, the box heavy in his lap. The security guard shifted, unsure. "Should I call the police?" he asked. "See if it's evidence." Jacob shook his head again, not trusting his voice. He unbuckled the leather strap, his fingers clumsy on the old metal. The lid creaked when he lifted it, a soft, rusty sound. Inside, instead of glittering jewels or stacks of cash, there were papers, folded in yellow at the edges. On top lay a faded Polaroid photo of a boy with messy dark hair and skinned knees, standing next to a young Isaiah in front of a tiny sapling, both of them grinning so wide it almost hurt to look at. Jacob stared down at his own 10-year-old face, frozen in sun and time. Under the photo was an envelope, worn but still sealed, with his name written on it in his father's strong, careful hand. For Jacob to open when he forgets who he is, it said on the front. The words blurred as his eyes filled. His father had died of a heart attack 15 years ago, in a hotel room between business trips, leaving Jacob a pile of debts and a head full of lessons about risk and hard work. No one had ever told him there was a letter. His hands shook as he slid a dirty finger under the flap and tore it open. A single sheet of paper, folded twice, slid out. "Jake," it began, in the slant he knew so well. "If you're reading this, it means time has moved on like it always does, and that little tree is bigger now. Maybe you're bigger too. Maybe you made all the money you dreamed about. I hope so. You were always the kid with the big ideas." Jacob could almost hear his father laughing as he read. "But I also know how easy it is to forget where you came from when the world starts clapping. So I asked Isaiah to bury this here, and to only tell you if you needed it. That man has been more faithful to this family than any lawyer or banker. Listen to him when he tells you you're getting too proud." Jacob swallowed, the words wobbling as he went on. "You and I planted that sapling together, remember? You said, 'Dad, I'm gonna be a billionaire one day, and I'll have a house bigger than this whole hill.' I told you, 'Fine, kid, chase the dream. Just don't let the money turn your heart hard.' You grabbed a napkin from the kitchen and wrote me a promise. Right there by the sink. You said, 'I promise when I'm rich, I will always see people, not just workers. I will listen, especially to the ones who don't have power.' I saved that napkin. It's in here too. If you broke that promise, son, it's not too late to fix it. Real wealth ain't what's in the bank. It's who can still look you in the eye and say they know you." The letter ended with a messy heart and the words, "Love you, Dad." Under the letter, Jacob found the napkin, stiff now, the ink a little smeared but still readable. In his own careless kid handwriting, the promise stared up at him like a mirror. His vision blurred again. He fumbled deeper into the box and found more papers. But these were not his father's. They were small slips, torn from notebooks and envelopes, all folded, all in Isaiah's neat, blocky handwriting. He opened one. "Paid Miss Carla's gas bill this month. Don't tell her. Kids need heat," it said. Another. "Bought cleats for Jamal, so he can play ball. Mom's hours cut." There were more. "Loaned Marisol's boy money for books. He got into community college." Each note had a small date and a tiny heart drawn in the corner, at the very bottom of the box. Under the notes lay something small and plastic, a red toy truck, faded and cracked on one side. On its roof, written in tiny letters, was a name, Dante. Jacob turned it over in his palm, feeling the grooves worn into the plastic by some child's fingers long ago. For the first time, he realized he knew almost nothing about Isaiah's life beyond this yard. Once, years back, he had heard one of the housekeepers mention that Isaiah used to have a boy, in a hushed tone. He had been too busy to ask. Now he sat there in the wet grass, his jeans soaked, holding pieces of stories he had never cared to hear. The realization hit him all at once, hot and sharp. Isaiah hadn't been burying stolen things under the tree. He had been guarding Jacob's past, guarding his father's words, guarding something of his own. The notes showed years of small, quiet gifts, paid from a paycheck Jacob barely noticed when he signed it. The toy truck spoke of a child who loved cars, and probably never got to drive one. The letter called Isaiah more faithful than any banker, and Jacob had thrown that faith away over a ring he wasn't even sure Isaiah had touched. Shame rose in him like a fast tide. His father had trusted Isaiah with the most important thing a poor man can trust someone with, his son's heart, and Jacob had looked at that same man and seen a suspect. Jacob stood up slowly, his knees stiff, the box still pressed to his chest. The security guard looked at him, eyes wide. "You okay, sir?" he asked. Jacob nodded, though he did not feel okay at all. "I fired the wrong man," he said, the words tasting bitter and true. He wiped his muddy hands on his hoodie and headed back toward the house, his mind already spinning. He needed to find Isaiah. He needed to give back more than a job. He needed to say the words "I was wrong" out loud, even if they scraped his throat on the way out. An hour later, Jacob's car rolled down streets he had not driven on in years. The glass towers and palm trees of his hilltop world were long gone, replaced by small apartment buildings with bars on the windows, corner stores with faded signs, kids in hoodies playing ball in empty lots. His driver, Luis, kept glancing in the rearview mirror, as if to check if this was really happening. "You sure about this address, Mr. Hart?" he asked. Jacob nodded, clutching the metal box on his lap. "That's what payroll has," he said. "It's where his checks go." He did not add that he felt sick thinking about those checks now, knowing how much weight those small numbers had carried in other people's lives. They pulled up in front of a narrow 3-story building with peeling paint and a cracked walkway. A chain-link fence leaned around a tiny patch of grass out front, where one brave rosebush tried to bloom. "I'll wait here," Louis said softly. Jacob stepped out, the city air warmer and closer than the high hill wind. A woman sitting on the front steps, braiding a little girl's hair, looked up at him like he was a strange bird who had landed in the wrong tree. "Excuse me," he said. "Do you know if Isaiah Green lives here?" The woman's eyes narrowed for a second, then softened with something like respect. "Top floor, 3C, she said. "If he don't want to see you, that's his right." Her words hit him like a quiet warning. The stairs creaked under his weight as he climbed. At 3C, he hesitated, then knocked. For a moment, there was nothing. Then a shuffling, a low cough, the sound of a chain sliding. The door opened a few inches. Isaiah stood there in a plain t-shirt and sweatpants, glasses perched low on his nose. He looked smaller without his work cap, but his eyes were the same. When he saw who was standing there in expensive sneakers, with a box in his hands, his face went very still. "Took you long enough," he said, voice flat. "What you want, Mr. Hart? Come to make sure I didn't dig up your whole yard while you slept." Jacob swallowed hard. "I found the box," he said. He held it up like proof, an apology and guilt, all at once, under the tree, with my father's letter, and your notes. For a second, something moved in Isaiah's eyes, but then the wall came back up. "Well, that tree don't know how to lie," the old man said. "Can't say the same for all of us." He started to close the door. "Wait," Jacob blurted. "Please." The word felt strange in his mouth. He had said it in deals, in soft ways meant to push people, but not like this. "I was wrong," he added, the second strange phrase of the day. "About you. About everything. I'm sorry." The hallway light flickered above them. Isaiah studied his face a long moment, taking in the messy hair, the mud on his jeans, the box clutched like a life ring. Slowly, he opened the door wider. "Come on in then," he said. "No sense making the neighbors listen to all this." The apartment inside was small but neat, the air smelling of coffee and old books. Plants sat on every window ledge, their leaves glossy and green, like the inside of a tiny jungle. On the wall, next to a cross, hung a cheap frame, holding a photo of a young boy with bright eyes, hugging a red toy truck. "Dante," it said in block letters at the bottom. Jacob's chest squeezed. Isaiah noticed his gaze. "That's my boy," he said softly. "Was my boy. He got caught in crossfire when he was 10, walking home from the corner store with a bag of chips and a juice. Wrong place, wrong time, they said. As if any time is the right time to lose your child." He sat down slowly in the worn armchair by the window and motioned for Jacob to take the other chair. "I buried his truck under your tree when your daddy asked me to bury that box," he went on. "Figured if that tree was gonna carry your family's hopes, maybe it could carry my grief too. I talked to them both when I worked. Your daddy, my Dante. That's what I was doing other morning when your cameras caught me. Mr. Hart, talking to people who ain't here no more." Jacob sank down into the chair, his throat tight. "I didn't know," he said, the words small and weak. Isaiah gave a dry, humorless chuckle. "You never asked," he replied. "You were a good kid once. You used to follow me around with a toy rake, asking why leaves fall and if flowers feel pain. Then you got busy, got rich, started looking at me like part of the lawn." He leaned forward. "Your daddy, he was rough around the edges, but he saw me. When the bankmen came to take the old house, we both cried." He said, "Isaiah, when Jake grows up, and this place gets fancy, don't let him forget who watered the ground. I promised him. I kept those letters. I kept your napkin. I kept my promises. You, the one who broke yours. The words hit hard, because they were true. Jacob opened the box on his lap and took out one of the small slips with Isaiah's handwriting. All these notes, he said softly. All these people you helped? Why didn't you ever tell me? Isaiah shrugged, the motion slow, his shoulders tired. Wasn't my place to pat myself on the back, he said. That ring of your mama's. I ain't never seen it outside her finger. If I had, I'd have told you. I got my own memories buried under that tree. Don't need nobody else's shine. He looked straight at Jacob. So what now, Mr. Hart? You come to hand me my job back like a prize. Congratulations, Isaiah. You get to mow the grass for a man who thinks you a thief when his stress gets high. Jacob flinched. He thought about how easy it would be to slide into apology and then right back into habit. To write a big check and call it fixed. But the letter in the box and the look on Isaiah's face told him that would not be enough. I don't want you to mow my lawn, he said slowly. Not unless you want to. I came to say I'm sorry and to ask for help. The last words were the hardest. That box showed me how far I've drifted from who I meant to be. I've been giving away big checks with my name on them and ignoring the people right in front of me. You've been doing the real work in the shadows. I want to change that. I want to see what you've been doing with the kids, with those notes. He took a breath. Will you show me? For a long second, Isaiah said nothing. Then he sighed. A long, slow breath that seemed to come from the soles of his feet. You really want to see? He asked. Not for a photo op. Not for your next speech. Jacob nodded, feeling heat rise in his face. Yes, he said. No cameras. Just me. Isaiah pushed himself up from the chair with a small grunt. All right, then, he said. Put them fancy shoes back on, Mr. Billionaire. We're going to the neighborhood. There was a hint of old teasing in his voice. That made Jacob's chest ache with something like hope. They drove only 10 minutes, but crossed what felt like a world. Isaiah led the way down a side street Jacob would never have noticed, past a row of run-down houses and an empty lot full of trash. At the end of the block, where two streets met, the scene changed. A chain-link fence wrapped around a square of land, but inside the fence, the ground was green and alive. Neat rows of vegetables grew in dark soil, tomatoes staked tall, collards wide and strong, sunflowers lifting their faces to the sky. A hand-painted sign hung on the fence. Green Roots Community Garden. Below it, in smaller letters, someone had added, Nourishing Kids in Hope. Children ran between the beds, laughing, squealing when a frog jumped, arguing about whose cucumber was bigger. A woman in a church hat knelt by a corner plot, pulling weeds with practiced hands. When she saw Isaiah, her face lit up. Mr. Zay, she called. You back? A little boy with braids sprinted over, holding up a carrot still dusted with earth. Look what I grew, he said proudly. Isaiah took it, grinned, and ruffled the boy's hair. You did that, Ty, he said. I just showed you where to put the seed. The simple words sliced through Jacob like a clean blade. He watched as more voices rose. Mr. Zay, can I plant strawberries? Mr. Zay, my grandma loved the soup we made. The old gardener moved among them like a slow river, steady and sure. Where did you get the money for all this? Jacob asked, his voice rough. Isaiah shrugged. Little bit from my checks, little bit from the church. Folks around here give what they can. Sister May over there, she'll bring empty jugs for watering. The kids' moms, they bring seeds. Sometimes. He hesitated, then gave a small smile. Sometimes a man up on a hill throws a donation at a youth program, and not all that money goes to shiny new logos. Some of it finds its way right here. Jacob blinked, then remembered his own name on a plaque at a youth center downtown. He had never visited. You built this with scraps, he said softly. I built this with trust, Isaiah replied. Kids trust somebody who shows up week after week, even when the funding is gone. As Jacob walked the rows, he felt his chest heavy and light all at once. He saw a skinny teenage girl teaching a smaller boy how to use a trowel, the little one listening serious. He saw a sign on one bed, Dante's Corner, written in wobbly letters, a red toy truck painted next to it. "We plant the sweetest stuff here," Isaiah said quietly, following his gaze. "Fruits, berries, sweet peas. It's how I talk to my boy now, with sugar and water and sun instead of words." Jacob thought of his own father, of the way he had been too busy making deals to come to this side of town when Isaiah's son died. "I'm sorry I wasn't there," he said. Isaiah shrugged again. "You were 15, he said. "Didn't even know. But you know now." They sat on 2 overturned buckets at the edge of the garden, while kids ran and dirt flew, and the sun climbed higher. Jacob felt sweat on his neck, dirt under his fingernails, from where he had helped a boy pull a weed. "It felt strangely good, Isaiah," he began, choosing each word with care. "This place matters. These kids, this dirt, this whole little patch of hope. You've been carrying it on your back with half a paycheck and a lot of faith. Let me help. Not by slapping my name on it and walking away. I want to put real money into this ground. Buy the lot. Fix the fence. Build a shed. Hire you full-time, as the boss, not the help. Expand to other blocks. Will you let me?" He looked at the older man, heart thudding. Isaiah studied him long and hard, as if he could see past the words to the heart behind them. "You sure you ain't just trying to make yourself feel better?" he asked slowly. "About that letter, that firing, that ring?" Jacob did not flinch. "I already feel terrible," he said. "Money won't fix my guilty conscience. That's on me. But maybe money can fix some of what I broke. Maybe it can build something new. My dad wrote that real wealth is who can still look you in the eye. I want to live like I believe that again. I can't do it without you." The last sentence came out in a rush, but once it was in the air, it felt right. Isaiah's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "You talk pretty when you ain't mad," he said. Then he nodded, slow. "All right, we'll try it your way. But this garden stays green, Roots, not Hart Farms. Kids don't need your company logo in their tomatoes." Jacob laughed, a sound that surprised them both. "Deal," he said. "No logos, just better shovels." Isaiah stuck out his hand, and Jacob took it, feeling for the first time in a long time like he was shaking hands on something that mattered more than stock. Months passed. Lawyers drew up papers. The empty lot where trash had piled for years became the first official Green Roots youth garden, owned by a new nonprofit with Isaiah as director and Jacob as quiet funder. Other lots followed. Kids from across the city signed up to learn how to turn hard dirt into something living. On Saturdays, Jacob came down without cameras or press, just a ball cap and jeans, to pull weeds and listen. His assistant said, "People are talking about this, you know, in a good way." For once, Jacob did not care how it played in a headline. On his hill, the hard fortress looked the same from the outside, but inside, something in him had shifted. One warm spring afternoon, a bus pulled up on the road below Jacob's house, and a group of kids poured out, eyes wide. Isaiah walked with them up the long drive, pointing out trees, teaching even now. "This one here is older than all of you," he told a boy who tried to climb a branch. "Show some respect." Near the top, the oak spread its arms wide, leaves full and bright. Jacob waited under it in a simple shirt and jeans, no suit, no tie, his sleeves rolled. At the base of the tree, the soil had been smoothed, a small stone marker placed in front. "Promise tree," it said. "Roots, remember?" The box had been put back in the ground, but not before they added new letters from kids who wrote about what they wanted to be. From Jacob, about the man he was still trying to become. Parents from both sides of the city stood together on the lawn, talking, laughing, in awkward, new ways. A local reporter hovered at the edge, camera lowered for once, just watching. Isaiah called the kids into a circle under the branches. "This is where it started," he said, nodding at Jacob. "Little Jake and his daddy planted this when he was about your age. Back then, he promised to always see people, not just what they do for him. Grown-ups break promises sometimes, but grown-ups can make new ones too." He looked at Jacob, and Jacob felt his throat tighten in the best way. Jacob stepped forward, his heart pounding, not from fear of a tough question from a banker, but from the weight of eyes that mattered more now. "I fired this man right here because I cared more about a missing ring and a perfect picture than about the person who had been loyal to my family my whole life," he said, voice steady but full. A murmur ran through the crowd. "I thought he had stolen from me. Turns out, I'm the one who had been stealing his dignity, his time, his wisdom, by treating him like part of the background. I was wrong. I'm saying it out loud so I don't forget again, and so maybe some of you won't make the same mistake." He glanced at the kids. "You see somebody in a uniform, or with dirt on their hands, or skin different than yours. You remember, you have no idea what they've buried under their tree." Silence fell, not empty, but full. A little girl raised her hand. "Can we plant our own promised tree in the garden?" she asked. Isaiah grinned. "That's the plan, baby girl," he said. Together, they pressed a new sapling into the earth, near the base of the old oak. Small hands and large hands working side by side, rich and poor, black and white, all smudged with the same good dirt. When they were done, Jacob looked at Isaiah, and then at the kids, at the hill and the city, at the mix of roots growing under all their feet. And he knew in his bones that the only success worth having is the kind that bends down to honor the people who held you up, because real wealth is measured not by what stands over the tree, but by the love and sacrifice hidden in the roots beneath it.